Okay, imagine this. It's the 1930s, deep in the Great Depression, right? And there's this man, Napoleon Hill, sitting quietly, eyes closed. But he's not just meditating. He's holding court with an invisible council, figures from history.
Yeah, not just thinking about them, but claiming he was interacting with them, that they actually became, well, real to him. Sounds pretty wild.
It really does. And this is the guy behind Think and Grow Rich, one of the biggest self-help books ever. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. We're your guides from the Deep Dive Cuttlefish channel, ready to jump into the sources.
That's right. Today we're looking at Napoleon Hill, specifically around the time he wrote Think and Grow Rich. We've got sources on the historical facts, his unique metaphysical ideas.
Like those invisible counselors, and the whole thoughts are things, concept, vibrations, the ether.
Exactly. But we're also looking at the controversies. That famous meeting with Andrew Carnegie, did it happen? What about all those interviews he claimed? We want to separate the man from the, let's say, the myth he sometimes built.
So this deep dive is about understanding that journey, the mental, the spiritual, maybe even the fabricated behind the book. How did he propose turning thoughts into reality, and what was actually going on in his life?
Let's start right there, with that origin story he always told.
Mm-hmm.
The pivotal moment, supposedly, was in 1908, a meeting with Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate.
The story goes Carnegie challenged him, right? Gave him this massive 20-year assignment to study successful people and find their secret.
That was the claim.
Yeah.
Carnegie supposedly opened up his network, introduced him to titans of industry, inventors, and planted the seed for the whole philosophy.
It's such a compelling start. I mean, who wouldn't want that backstory? A mission from Carnegie himself. But you hinted there are questions.
Big questions. Modern historians are really skeptical that this meeting, at least as Hill described it, ever happened. The main issue, the timing.
Okay.
Hill only really started pushing this detailed Carnegie Commission story years after Carnegie died in 1919.
Oh, so when Carnegie couldn't, confirm or deny it?
Exactly. It feels convenient. There's just no independent evidence, no letters, no records, nothing to back up that specific foundational meeting or commission.
So the thinking is, maybe he crafted this heroic origin to give his work more weight, more credibility.
Seems likely, yeah. Saying Andrew Carnegie sent me on this quest is a powerful endorsement. So right away, you've got this tension. Idealistic visionary on a mission, or maybe a savvy storyteller building his own legend. That question kind of follows him.
But even without the official Carnegie stamp, he did spend decades studying success, didn't he? That part seems true.
Oh, absolutely. He was dedicated figuring out what made successful people tick. And it led to his first major work, The Law of Success, back in 1928, a huge 8-volume thing.
And that brought him some success of his own.
It did, for a bit. He got a taste of the good life, Rolls-Royce, big estate, the whole deal, living the philosophy.
But then the crash, 1929.
Right. The Great Depression hit, and it hit Hill hard. Lost the estate, lost his money, went broke. The early 30s were a real struggle for him, trying different things, trying to get back on his feet.
And it's there, in that struggle, that Think and Grow Rich starts to form.
Exactly. Mid-1930s, the Depression is still grinding on. He's remarried to Rosalie Beeland, and our sources show she was really important to the process.
Yeah, you mentioned she wasn't just supportive, she was actively involved in the writing and editing.
Substantially involved, yeah.
Yeah.
It seems it was very much a collaborative effort, born out of this time of intense national and personal hardship.
So the book comes out in 1937.
And it just takes off like wildfire. It became the Napoleon Hill book, his defining work. Eventually sold millions. The exact number is debated, maybe not the 20 million sometimes claimed, but undeniably massive.
Wow. And it brought him back financially?
Oh, yeah. He was back to living lavishly by his mid-50s. The timing was perfect, really. People were desperate for hope, for any kind of strategy to escape the Depression's grip.
And this message that your thoughts, your mindset could change your material reality must have been incredibly powerful then.
It was exactly what people needed to hear.
Right.
That even in the worst circumstances, they had some control, some internal power they could use.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Let's dig into the core ideas, the metaphysical engine, as you called it. What was driving this belief that thoughts could become things?
Well, he was heavily influenced by the New Thought movement, which was big on mind power and a sort of universal intelligence. And he also drew parallels with new technology, especially radio.
Radio, how did that fit in?
He used it as an analogy. His central idea was thoughts are things, like actual forces. He talked about the ether, this invisible substance scientists then thought filled space. Hill believed thoughts traveled through this ether.
Like radio waves.
Exactly. And thoughts created vibrations. Hold a thought, especially with strong emotion or faith, and it sends out these vibrations, attracting similar vibrations, other thoughts, opportunities back to you. Like attracts like.
He even talked about mental telepathy, didn't he? Minds tuning into each other.
Yep. He literally said thoughts pass between minds like sound via radio, that mental telepathy is a reality.
And the key to making this work, the amplifier, was faith.
But not necessarily religious faith in the traditional sense. More like absolute unwavering belief in achieving your goal. That belief, that faith, supposedly made your mind vibrate at the right frequency to attract success, like a magnet.
It's fascinating how he used science, or what seemed like science then, to explain it. The radio analogy made the invisible seem plausible.
It gave the mechanism, it made the idea, whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. Sound almost technical.
That's his most famous quote, isn't it?
It is. And he'd point to someone like Edison, saying Edison succeeded because he knew the mind could produce anything it conceived and believed. The formula was basically intense desire plus unwavering faith plus clear vision results.
Which sounds incredibly familiar now.
Oh, completely. Decades later, The Secret basically repackaged this core concept, sometimes almost word for word. Hill really laid the groundwork for that whole modern law of attraction movement.
Okay, so back to those invisible counselors. That chapter in the book is memorable. Tell us about that specific practice again.
Right. Chapter 14, it was this nightly ritual. Before sleep, he'd get into a meditative state, close his eyes, and imagine this council table.
With historical figures sitting around it.
Yeah, his chosen mentors. He lists them. Emerson, Paine, Edison, Darwin, Lincoln, Burbank, Napoleon Bonaparte, Henry Ford, and Andrew Carnegie was there too, naturally. He appointed himself chairman.
What was the point of these imaginary meetings?
He said it was to rebuild my own character, to absorb their qualities, their strengths. He saw it as a way to overcome his own limitations by internalizing greatness. He'd literally talk to them in his mind.
Asking Emerson about nature, Lincoln about justice and humor, Carnegie about organization, like personalized coaching sessions.
Exactly. But then came the really strange part. He claimed that after months, these figures started feeling, well, real.
Real how? Like they were actually talking back, offering advice he hadn't thought of.
That's what he implies. He wrote he was astounded to find they became apparently real, behaving autonomously, giving him insights as if he was connecting to some infinite intelligence.
Wow. Okay, so how do we interpret that? A genuine mystical connection? Or something psychological?
Psychologically, it sounds a lot like what Carl Jung called active imagination. Consciously engaging with figures from your subconscious archetypes, mentors to unlock insights. By focusing so intensely, he was likely tapping deep into his own creativity and subconscious mind.
Did Hill himself think they were actually spirits?
He was a bit ambiguous. He acknowledged they were only real to him because of his imagination, but he insisted the effect was real. Through autosuggestion, by repeatedly meeting them, he believed he was programming their traits into himself.
And didn't he say he got spooked by it at one point?
Yeah, there's this detail where he stopped the meetings for a while because they felt too real. It unnerved him. He only started again later, finding them very real and emotionally stimulating. Whether it was spirits or his own mind, it shows incredible dedication, maybe even obsession.
So we have this powerful message, these really unique, almost shamanic practices, but then there's the other side you mentioned, the controversies.
Right. He preached integrity, positive mental attitude, but his own history is messy. Let's revisit some of that.
The Carnegie story first. Seems pretty clear that was likely, shall we say, embellished or even fabricated after Carnegie's death.
Yeah, the evidence just isn't there. The published conversations read like Hill's philosophy, not actual dialogue. It looks like a constructed myth.
And the other interviews, Ford, Edison, presidents.
Similar issues. He claimed hundreds of interviews. He definitely met some famous people briefly. There's that photo with Edison. But proof of extensive, in-depth interviews shaping his philosophy. Very little. His claims of advising Presidents Wilson or FDR seem like pure self-promotion, frankly. No records support it.
And it wasn't just stretching the truth about meetings. There were actual financial troubles and, well, accusations of fraud, even before the book hit big.
Definitely. Bankruptcies, mail fraud charges way back in the early 1900s, a collapsed correspondence school scam in the 20s where he apparently skipped town. Newspapers called him a get-rich-quick hustler.
Wow. That's not the image you get from the book.
Not at all. And even after Think and Grow Rich made him famous, there were questionable things. His involvement in the late 30s with that bizarre New York cult, the Royal Fraternity of Master Metaphysicians.
The one trying to raise the immortal baby?
That's the one. Hill was the godfather. The whole thing ended in a fraud conviction for the leader, who tried to drag Hill down with him. Hill distanced himself, but it's a strange chapter.
And more business troubles later on, too.
Yeah, another course collapsed amid fraud accusations in the early 50s before he formed a more stable partnership with W. Clement Stone. But the pattern is there. Lawsuits, unhappy associates.
It creates such a conflict, doesn't it? The message is so positive, so focused on integrity, but the messenger's life seems full of ethical gray areas, maybe worse.
It really does.
Yeah.
Was he a sincere teacher who stumbled? A con man who wrote a great book? Maybe a bit of both. Perhaps he believed his own message so much, conceive and believe you achieve, that he felt justified bending the truth to make his own success story fit the narrative.
It definitely forces you, as a reader, to think about separating the wisdom from the source. Can you take value from Think and Grow Rich while acknowledging the author's very imperfect life?
It's a crucial question. And despite all that, his influence is undeniable. So many core ideas in modern self-help trace back to him.
Like the law of attraction, positive thinking, visualization.
Mastermind groups. That's huge in business circles now, though usually with, actual living people. The secret is basically Hill 2.0.
And you can see parallels in psychology too, right? Visualization in sports, positive affirmations in therapy. It's like he intuitively grasped some psychological principles, even if he explained them metaphysically.
Absolutely. The invisible counselor's practice, viewed now, looks like inner mentor work, or that active imagination idea. People will do similar things with journaling or meditation today.
Of course, we don't really talk about the ether anymore.
No, the literal physics isn't there. But you can translate it. Intense belief drives action and perseverance that looks like attracting success. Dominant thoughts shape attitude. Attitude shapes outcomes. That's cognitive psychology. The effect feels similar, even if the explanation is different.
But that cautionary tale remains. The ethics. His life makes you ask, if you manifest success through deception, are you really living the principles?
It's a deep question about means and ends. So as we wrap up, maybe think about what resonates with you from Hill. Is it the sheer power he attributed to thought, the idea of imagination as a tool? Or is it the warning sign about aligning your life with your message?
Maybe try that invisible counsel exercise mentally. Who would you put on your board? What qualities would you want to absorb? It's a great thought experiment.
Or think about a goal you have. Where's your belief level? Are doubts holding you back? Could some of these techniques used ethically, of course, help you align your inner world? And where is that line between healthy faith and just wishful thinking?
Hill's story is just fascinating, complex, contradictory. He conjured this philosophy, lived imperfectly, but undeniably inspired millions.
He died in 1970, left about $1 million. Not bad. But his real legacy is making people ask that fundamental question. How much power do my thoughts really have?
He put it perfectly in the book. There are no limitations to the mind except those we acknowledge. Both poverty and riches are the offspring of thought. A powerful idea to consider.
Definitely gives you something to think about regarding your own offspring of thought. We'd love to hear what struck you most about this deep dive into Napoleon Hill. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know what other topics you'd like us to tackle.
Until next time, stay curious and keep growing.